Throughout history, across cultures and continents, stories of giants have loomed. Large, towering beings with immense strength, sometimes revered as gods, other times feared as monsters. From the biblical Nephilim to the red-haired giants of Native American legend, from ancient myths to modern encounters like the infamous Giant of Kandahar, the question remains, were these creatures real? Did giants once walk among us? And if so, could they still be out there? Tonight on Zumundous, we venture into the realm of the colossal, exploring the possibility that giants were more than just legends.
Zumundous.
And welcome to Zumundous Podcast. I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
For this one, we're gonna have to look up. We're gonna have to look up, not to the skies, but maybe about 12, 13 feet up.
To a bigger man than me.
To a bigger man than me. We just want to talk about giants tonight.
Giants?
Giants. They might be giants, my friend.
That's a band. Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
Not the band, though. We're going to talk about.
Now we're going to talk
about giants in folklore and actual real life giant, maybe real life giants. I don't know.
Giant human beings.
Giant humanoids, right?
Well, I guess if they're not human, then yeah. If they're
humanoids.
Yeah. Well, you got to think how big of a giant are you talking about?
Well, that's up for debate, isn't it?
So, what denotes a giant? Pretty much everybody I know is taller than me, except you. So I'm kind of a midget.
Jesus, man, always with the short jokes.
Yeah,
I'm 5'8.5", man.
Normal sized
I am
people.
average height, you son of a bitch.
I am of average height and stature. Well endowed.
All right, so
no,
but no, seriously, as far as as culture and history goes back, there's always been tales of humanoids, of humans that are larger than we are. Maybe it came to be because people believed in gods. The gods were bigger than us. But whatever the case may be, anywhere you go back, there are stories of giant humans, right?
Yes.
And I think it goes back as far as the Bible, even in the book of Genesis.
It goes back to Sanskrit.
It does, yeah. And the book of Genesis talks about the Nephilim,
the Sumerians.
Mm-hmm. I think probably the most famous giant from history would probably be, of course,
Andre.
Second, okay, maybe the second thing, because Andre was of course the eighth wonder of the world.
He's a gentle giant.
He wasn't.
Unless
he wasn't really gentle in the ring, but
yeah.
But the most famous giant, of course, would be Goliath. Goliath from the book of Samuel in the Bible, and I'm gonna repeat what the Bible says here in the book of Samuel. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. Now, 6 cubits and a span, I'm going to take a little...
what's a cubit?
Now, now a cubit is kind of an inaccurate unit of measurement. But the way they used to measure a cubit was from your elbow to the top of your middle finger. So that this would be a cubit. However, you also have to take into account people were probably shorter back then.
Possibly.
I'm pretty sure people were not as tall then as they are today. So a cubit.
It's an ancient.
Yeah, it's an ancient unit of measurement. So they said he was 6 cubits
elbow to the tip
and
of the finger.
A span.
What's a span?
That's a great question. But we can kind of surmise that based on that, Goliath was probably between 9 and 10 feet tall.
Okay. Yeah,
so
that's because they figured out they're talking here when you look up cubits on qubits on the internet. Obviously, they measured the arc in that, right? And they've got what they think are fairly accurate measures, at least depicted in pictures.
Hold your we're on camera right now. Hold your arm up to mine now. Is it
pretty similar?
Pretty
but
similar.
Isn't it
right?
yard?
See, yours is But here's the thing, like, see, like we're
Some
pretty
people have
lined up right
longer
now,
fingers,
and
yeah.
your arm is like maybe about half an inch, maybe a quarter inch longer than mine.
Not much
so
longer,
I mean,
yeah.
so what I'm saying, what I'm trying to describe there is that it is an inaccurate measure.
Well,
A
it's
unit
like-
of measurement because it depends on the
yeah.
person measuring.
We'll
you know
make
what I mean?
spears twice as long as a man. Well, some men are longer than others. Your mother's been telling you stories about me, eh?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that Braveheart?
Braveheart,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. So, no, but yeah, isn't a yard like the queen's arm or something? And it happened to be like 3 feet or some shit.
The queen had arms that were 3 feet long.
Okay, that doesn't sound
That
right. when
doesn't
I say
sound
it out
right at
loud,
all,
but-
no.
But something like that.
The queen sounds like some from like Evil Dead
You
or
know,
something.
you could
like
have that. There's a disease actually we're going to talk about with. I had all that written down. I actually got rid of that because it's kind of boring. But they think even Abraham Lincoln might have had it, where your arms are like super long or your legs like,
Sure.
or your hands are real big,
Mm-hmm.
like abnormally large. Because obviously we're going to talk about abnormally large people. Yeah.
All right, sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, so back to Goliath. Okay, so 6 cubits in a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor and bronze weighing 5,000 shekels.
What's a shekel?
I think
I don't mean
I
to
think
be
no,
fact
it's a
checking you on
unit. It
this.
was
I don't-
no, it was a unit of weight. I think they're saying that his armor weighed about 125 pounds.
That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, I mean, well, for like a 9.5 foot tall dude, it's not, makes sense. 6 on his, on his legs he wore bronze greaves and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His shaft spear was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels.
There's a shekel that was money.
Correct.
Shekel.
His shield bearer went ahead of him. So that was just kind of the biblical description of Goliath. So he was large in scope. Plus, like we can probably surmise that the people back in the day were shorter than they are now. So like you
I
think
don't
even
know.
if he
With
was
all these
even if he
giant
was like
stories, though.
even if he was like 6.5, 7 feet
That's
tall
a
back
big
then,
dude, though.
comparatively, let's say like the people back then were only like 5.5
You're
feet
gonna
tall.
say 4.
Well, no. I wasn't gonna say 4, but like if they were like 5 to 5.5 feet tall, like
And-
a guy walking out like 6.5 feet tall, like that's
big
a huge
He
guy.
sticks out
Yeah,
like a sore
exactly.
thumb, yeah. But people are 5.5 feet tall today.
Yeah, but on average, like what if people didn't get taller than like 5.5? If like 5.5 feet tall was like the tallest they could have been.
Yeah.
And then here comes this dude that's like 6.5 feet tall. You know,
He'd be huge,
He
yeah.
would be pretty huge, and they would refer to him as a giant.
Absolutely.
So I know that they measured him 6 cubits, but if people back then are shorter, then the arm length is going to be shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're proportionate, if you have it's called your ape index actually. So depending on your arms, your length, this is a real thing compared to the rest of your
Okay.
body, right? So some people can only their hands go down their belt and they look like they have short arms. Some people it goes down to your thigh. Some people it goes all the way down to your knees and it looks weird. It's your ape index, right?
Sure.
So like a boxer's reach, is longer than their height usually. So if he's like, he's 69 inches, but his reach is 72, that's your wingspan kind of thing. So yeah, theoretically, if you're proportioned correctly, your cubit or whatever would be, relative to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Nerd alert.
there was that's right. Well, there was some speculation. I think a lot of people said that Goliath was Nephilim. And so if you go back to like the book of Genesis, the Nephilim were the results of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. So like basically angels and or demons.
Funny you say that because
What's up?
I read today that even in the Sumerian text, you could take the Nephilim as the Anunnaki bred with humans and the same result, right? Same story from two different cultures.
Sure.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're big bitches, right?
So what was I? Oh yeah. So Nephilim. Let's see. But then we had the flood, and they were wiped out, right?
Yes, yeah.
But then according to the Bible,
That's a common
it happened
thing,
again. So it says in the Bible that, but according to the Bible, like it happened before the flood.
Yep.
And then like all the Nephilim were wiped out.
Okay.
But then they came down and just did it again and made more Nephilim. So
Yeah.
what was the point of that?
I don't know.
So yeah, so I started like looking into it, like So I became interested in the topic, and I was like, all right, well, let's see, giants in modern day culture. Like, let's see what I can find out about it. So I started looking into it a little bit. And by all means, if you have something you want to,
I've got a ton of stuff, man.
Let's see. I had I went to go look up Native American stories.
So what possessed you to look that up, actually?
What, Native American stories?
Yeah, specifically.
Well, because I was Googling.
There's a lot of good ones.
There are a lot of good ones, but I was Googling giants across like folklore and culture, and that's what there's a lot of things throughout like stories. Like, of course, we have like the fairy tales of like Jack and the Beanstalk and things like that. Right.
That's your traditional like Dungeons and Dragons giant. He's like 60 feet tall.
Yeah, exactly. But you got to think like which sounds like fantastical and weird, but we'd never see it. But you got to think like all of those stories came from something, right?
Somebody saw some big guy.
Well, somebody saw some big guy, and then of course it's built up over the course of things. But like blew it up a little bit more, and then before you know it, we have a story about a boy going off to face off with like a 60-foot tall giant. Now maybe that's of course that's silly. Yeah, now of course there might have been some magic beans involved, and that's silly, but that story comes from somewhere. There were large people. There had to have been, right?
There are large people now.
Yeah, I mean there are large people now, like Shaquille O'Neal, big dude.
This is a big dude.
Big dude. My name's Shaquille O'Neal.
He's big.
I'm a big guy.
How tall is Shaq?
7'1",
That's
I think.
Cool.
And of course, you've got Paul White,
small in
the wrestler, the Big Show, 7'2".
Oh yeah, he's a big guy too.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not completely out of the question to talk about somebody over 7 feet tall, because there's lots of people over 7 feet tall in this world.
Let's talk about that, and this will get into the general megafauna of humanity, right? And obviously that's a different term, but that's beside the point. So back in the day, people, how could people get so big, right? Simply it's like, oh, there's more oxygen. It's like, okay, well that doesn't
make sense.
It worked for lizards or plants or something, but anyway, we're gonna kind of skip over that. The guy who was born in the 1920s, do you remember his name?
Robert Wadlow.
Or like early 1900s.
1919, I think he was born.
Yeah. And he was
jumping
the
ahead of me.
tallest
That's okay.
guy ever, right? Sorry.
No. 1918.
1918
to 1940. Yeah. He was the tallest. He was the tallest man on record.
Right.
So so he lived from 1918 to 1940, and he was 8 foot 11 inches.
That's huge.
That was, I mean, there's
He's
pictures of him, man. You can see him.
taller than Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
That's really crazy, right? So he was massive, and he had to walk with a cane. And
he died at 22. Sadly,
yes,
he was super young.
Well, a lot of people have like giganticism, or they have like a tumor on the pituitary gland. They grow really fast, right? And this guy was the tallest guy that we have in recorded history, right? But recorded history is whatever. We might not have been writing down people's heights all the time. And then there's the oldest, or not the oldest, sorry, different Guinness Book of World Records thing. There's like a tallest woman category where there's a bunch of really, really tall women.
Sure.
And then there's also different reasons.
Probably live in Norway or something.
So one of them does. One lady actually just has tall parents, they figured out.
Okay.
Like both her parents are really tall, and then she got super tall somehow. So it's not always having a tumor on your pituitary gland or having like giganticism or something like that. You can actually just be tall as shit.
That's imagine like going to the doctor, like, what's the diagnosis, doctor? Oh, you're just tall as shit.
You're just really tall.
You're just tall as shit.
But and also like when we start getting into this, the archaeological side of finding giant bones and all of this. A lot of the giant skeletons recovered are in the 7 foot, 8 foot range. A lot of them are 8 feet, a lot of them are 7 foot, which I actually found very disappointing because I was like, oh man, they must be like 10 feet, but they are not 10 feet.
No. Well, I mean, and that's funny because I was going to talk a little bit about that with some of these skeletons that have been found in North America over the years. Now, there's been a lot of like large skeletons that have been found over the years. The first one, which kind of made me raise an eyebrow, was in Steelville, Missouri in 1933. There was an 8 foot tall skeleton found. As part of a search for the Lost Giant show, James Clary investigated the following account that had this heading. All right.
Okay.
And this was from This is from the Steelville Ledger in 1933.
Yes,
an ancient Ozark giant dug up near Steelville. Strange discovery made by a boy looking for arrowheads gives this Missouri town an absorbing mystery to ponder.
Oh, I know the story.
So so this was in the Ozarks, and this was in 1933. So they uncovered this thing, and this was an 8 foot tall skeleton. Like there's actually pictures of a 6 foot, like 2 inch man like laying next to it, and it dwarfs him. But I started to think about that, and I was just like, well, like that's not too terribly fantastical, right? Like 8 foot tall, yeah, that's really big. But like even the tallest living man today, his name is Sultan Colson. He's close to our age. He was born in like 1982. He's a Turkish farmer, and he stands at 8'3". So I mean, it's not like entirely out of the realm of possibilities.
Did Robert lived in like Nebraska or Kansas or something like that, right?
Illinois or Ohio.
Supposedly, my grandmother saw him when she was like,
oh really?
Well, they were both alive at the time, like a million years ago.
Yeah.
And there's a picture she had of him, and I don't know if it's from a newspaper or if it was somebody's picture, but he's like standing in a barn, and his arms, you can't see some of you can. His arms are like touching the rafters on like both sides of this barn because he's just so
he was
wicked big. Yeah.
As they said in Deuce Bigelow, that's a huge bitch. he was a big guy, and you find out he died young.
Yeah, he did. That's sad. A lot of people that are pretty large end up passing away pretty young because there's a lot of strain.
Well, you think it was that, but it was actually an infection that took him out.
Oh.
Yeah, like it didn't even have anything to do with his heart. Like he probably could have lived like I know Andre the Giant lived to 46.
Andre also drank 100 beers one night.
He drank a barrel of beers.
100 beers. Like Nathan Explosion. Freaking, yeah. That's a true story from what I understand.
I also heard that he brought all of the production of Princess Bride to a standstill as he had let out just a massive fart eruption. And then, like, everybody just kind of like stopped and turned and stared because this thing went on for like several seconds. And then the director was just like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
To which Andre the Giant responded, "I am now, boss."
Far out, man. Apparently, Andre is an awesome person to be around. That's really cool. But 100 beers are probably not ideal for anybody's health.
But if you are Andre the freaking Giant, like, you can.
What I was getting at is Robert walked with a cane. He did have some of the issues that some of the taller people we have. There's a guy, I think there's a guy in China or something right now. He's walking with a cane.
Mm-hmm. Ryan says Andre had to use a bathtub as a toilet. Is that for real?
Is that a real?
No,
I don't believe.
No,
that.
You're joking.
No. That just sounds silly. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people have the health issues from just being big, and it wears on your joints and bones.
But everybody, like, if you guys are listening to our show, you're like, stop freaking talking about like the real world stuff and get into like the crazy. You want to hear the crazy stories? The crazy story. So here's a crazy story for you. And
I got one that's.
You got one? Do you want to jump into yours first?
Well, I don't know if mine's crazy. It might be true.
Mine, I don't know. I'll tell the story and then we'll talk about it.
Let's do yours first.
You want to do mine first?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the Kandahar Giants.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm dead serious. We're going to talk about the Kandahar Giants.
The Giant of Kandahar.
The Giant of Kandahar back in 2002. A whole 21 years ago. An elite tactical team was said to have killed this giant, which was a 13-foot tall beast with flaming red hair.
That's tall.
13 feet tall. Flaming red hair. 6 fingers on each hand.
So you had 12 fingers.
It's 12 fingers total.
Okay.
And 2 sets of teeth.
That's so in relevant giant lore. A lot of the skeletons they find are bigger, have several sets of teeth. One of them had 2 sets at the top. A couple of them had 2 full sets.
No, really?
Yeah, this is the thing.
That's why. Okay, we'll talk about that here in a minute. But that's like when you start talking about like the tallest like creatures like that we've like human, like actual humans that are not like mythical beings that we've
Those
seen.
aren't mythical.
Well, I'm talking about humans.
Yeah.
Usually span like no more than like 8 feet tall. Like Robert Wadlow was close to 9 feet tall.
He was big though.
And then even if Goliath was real as they reported him, there was no way he was like probably 9.5 feet tall.
Which is also really big.
Which is also really big. But now we're talking about a 13-foot tall humanoid creature with 6 fingers on each hand and 2 sets of teeth. So now we're going into the realm of like, okay, this is definitely a cryptid story now.
Mythical.
Like this is a non-human type creature.
Maybe.
So, all right. So the story goes, as so the legend says, in 2002, a group of soldiers went missing while on patrol in a remote mountain in the region of Kandahar. Now, you served in the military. Do you know this area? Like you served in the early 2000s.
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with that area. Yes.
Okay, so you know the area of Kandahar.
First of all, just get this out of the way. I never saw no fucking giant.
Are you sure?
I'm 100%.
How much is the government paying you, bro?
Also, I was never in Afghanistan in 2002. So
what years were you, or can you not talk about it?
Way later.
Okay.
Later in the conflict. Yeah.
So this is in south of Afghanistan, rather. And when they failed to make radio contact for some time, the military sent in a special ops unit to investigate through a branch of the armed forces. What's that? I'm sorry.
This is the first thing that pugs my bullshit meters when they're like special ops unit.
Yeah. So it's funny because we've got the actual military guy here. As I'm reading this, he's like, no, bullshit.
It's just like
bullshit.
the same thing with would you say like ELF mind control? It's like cool if I just say something mind control.
Yeah.
It makes it sound sexy, so it makes it sound real. It's the details, right?
Right.
Like when people start adding,
they start adding
details,
like special op forces. Yeah, and you're like, what? Who? What?
But they're special. It must.
Yeah,
be
I mean, well, to like a layperson reading this, they're like, yeah, okay, that sounds legit.
But anyway,
So up in the mountain, the unit came across a cave scattered with army equipment around. But no sign of missing soldiers. And that's when they encountered the Kandahar giants, so the story says. Though the tale grows with the telling, so this is something of a... I mean, right there, that should be your giveaway, right? Like, this is a tall tale. With some reports suggesting that the humanoid grew as tall as 15 feet. This red-haired
really
giant...
big guy.
With 6 digits on each hand, leather moccasins.
Yeah, they said he covered his feet like moccasins.
That's weird.
I do remember. That's kind of a
and
weird
smelling
detail.
like dead bodies. So this thing smells like death.
Which
apparently.
I think is alluding to some of the other historical reports that they might eat people.
Yeah, I think they're saying like
Yeah.
he had some humans stuck in his teeth, right?
Honestly, this sounds like they took one of the American Indian stories and then they just threw it in Kandahar with some soldiers around it.
Now
that's my personal opinion. This is
here's
all
the thing.
fake, but
here's the thing that kind of gets me. Like this is the point, according to the story, where he suddenly emerged from the cave and impaled one of the soldiers with a spear.
you woke me up and now I'm mad. Right.
Yeah.
I'm the Kandahar giant.
Yeah, now this is the thing too. Like, all right, so I don't. You were in the military, I wasn't, but I know enough to know that an entire unit coming up on like
It makes a little noise.
well, like you got to think an entire unit's coming up on a cage, and you have like cave. You have military equipment strewn about the front of this cave. Do you think they're just gonna like walk in like let's see
No,
what? No,
no,
they're
that's not how
they're gonna scope this shit out, right? Like, and they're not just gonna so some dude like laying some even giant or not laying at the bottom laying in wait with a spear is not gonna get the jump on these guys, right?
Let's say even America's fastest infantry training pipeline is still like teaching people to have situational awareness and stuff, right? Like these guys are going to run up, they're going to be like, hey, secure the mouth of that cave, make sure no monsters come out or bad guys or whatever. Like now let's check out the equipment. They're not just
they wouldn't be looking for giants, but they would probably be looking for Taliban or something hiding in that cave, right?
Or whatever their mission was.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, whatever. There's definitely some danger here happening.
Yeah, they're going to be on their toes,
I'm going to call
imagine.
bullshit on this like automatically just by saying a giant just suddenly emerged and spearheaded some dude.
No, I mean, if you're patrolling out and then you'd be like, hey, boss, there's a giant standing up there.
Yeah.
Like everybody's going to see it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that happens. So we got one soldier down already, impaled with a spear, and the other soldiers open fire on this. And it took...
It's like Predator, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it took apparently 30 seconds of continuous fire
Now
to
this
take
is where I call
down.
bullshit.
Yeah, hit me. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hit
So, and I'm going to grossly overstate this. Guns are guns, right? They work, right? And whatever like a standard infantry guy is carrying at the time, or special ops, whatever. It's really not that big of a difference in the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
They probably got some grenades, grenade launchers. Maybe somebody's got a rocket. Everybody's got like a rifle, probably got a 240 or saw, right? Machine,
Mm-hmm.
couple light machine guns. But in the story, they specifically reference having a Barrett 50 cal, right? That pretty much goes through whatever the hell it wants to go through, right?
Sure.
Depending on the ammunition used and stuff. 30 seconds to kill a humanoid. One of those soldiers is going to shoot him in the head.
You'd think, right?
Right. Not everybody's just aiming for like his big toe or whatever. And they're like, oh, it's not taking him down. Like, it's not a video game, right? Or it's like attack his legs. Like, they're going to... I just don't believe this. What is he, like bulletproof or something?
Yeah, like I don't know. This story is like
Unless
I mean
he was-
it's lighting up my bullshit detector.
Yeah, unless he was like one of those 1980s shootout guys who are on PCP, also happens to be a giant in Kandahar.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of level of silliness this has to it.
So I'll continue reading here.
Yeah.
We can kind of add our commentary as we go. So this is as the story goes. Between them, the squad was armed with full auto M4 carbines. Recon carbines.
I don't know what a recon carbine is.
This is semi-automatic.
Sounds cool though.
And M107 Barrett anti-material rifles firing
material.
50 BMG. I don't know what any of that shit means.
It's 50 caliber round.
Sure.
It's the one that the 50 cals from all the World War II movies shoot.
Okay, got it.
It's been around for 100 years.
Anyway, so that reads one report.
That gun hasn't, but that round has it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
This much firepower concentrated on one target for 1 second, let alone 30, would be extremely destructive.
It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. After the troops killed the giant, they loaded it into a helicopter, which carried it to a transport plane where no one ever saw it again. You got commentary? Jump on in there, man.
Well, we don't know what kind of helicopter they loaded onto, right? But
it says Chinook.
Okay,
Chinook
there you go. A
helicopter.
Chinook, yeah. Okay, so they're pretty big. So yeah, you can fit if you can fit 2 6-foot guys, you can fit a 12-foot guy in a helicopter, right?
Sure.
And so you can put them in a Chinook. They're heavy lift too, so they can pick up a big guy. I don't know how much this guy weighs, but can they even drag him up? 15 feet tall.
Well, I mean, imagine an entire platoon drag him up.
Think about there's 200-pound guys my height walking around.
Yeah.
So you double my height. So this guy could weigh like 600 pounds, right?
Could.
400 pounds, like, yeah, 6.
No, I think if he's 13 feet,
he's not going to be much heavy.
What's the average? Let's say the average guy weighs anywhere between like 6 foot guy would probably weigh about 200 pounds, maybe.
I don't know.
Give or take.
I mean,
so
we're
let's
Americans,
let's
so we're
just double
generally
it
a
and then
little
add
heavier.
another 50. So let's say he weighed probably in the neighborhood of about 450 pounds. If I'm ballparking,
Maybe 5.
in this imaginary world where this actually happened.
100 pounds of foot or whatever.
Yeah.
That's 1,500 pounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
anyway, yeah.
anyways, so
he disappears, and what happens to the squad of infantry guys or whatever?
no one ever saw it again. The soldiers were forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Does the
I think that would work for about 10 minutes.
I was going to say,
yeah,
it's like the I Kill Bin Laden
yeah.
guy.
I showed you that Funny or Die video, right? Like that would work for about 10 minutes, and as soon as they go to the bar, somebody's going to talk. Like, I mean, maybe not. I mean, maybe it was such a traumatizing event. Everybody's like, I'm never talking about that. But obviously, we have the story of the Giant of Kandahar, so pretty silly, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's the Giant of Kandahar. At least you would think that's where the story ends. But there's a little bit of a PS, a cliff note or two, with the story, if you will. So they said that the soldiers were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. The government would keep them quiet, which I don't know if that's how that works in the government, but that's neither here nor there. But so the story goes, eventually the soldiers all broke their silence because, as one of the men would later say, the people have a right to know.
I think that would just be
truth.
so scary to see a giant.
So
Yeah.
in August of 2016, Snopes, website Snopes, reached out to the Department of Defense to ask about the Kandahar Giant incident. The Department of Defense told the outlet on no uncertain terms that they had no record or information about a special forces member killed by a giant in Kandahar.
Yeah.
What's more, there's no press releases on the
That's
Department
not
of
funny,
Defense.
but
Yeah. Well, I mean,
people dying is not funny. Like,
no,
just-
people dying not funny,
the
but I don't think
giant
I don't
is
think
the
this
silly
I don't
part,
think
yeah.
this person died, but that's
Yeah.
neither here. I think he was made up for the story.
right.
What's more, there are no press releases on the Department of Defense website involving either a special forces troop disappearing in Afghanistan or any incident involving soldiers killing a giant.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a. It's great to make fantasy stories, right?
Sure, I mean,
Yeah,
it makes.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's
it's super. It's super. Were you
How
not
many-
entertained?
How many times have you heard about that prior to even doing the research for the
Twice.
show? Right? Yeah, it's a thing, right? Yeah, it sounds scary. It's a place
Yeah, but
very.
it's an entertaining story, and it just kind of makes your imagination go like, God, are there giants?
Are
out
there
there?
giants?
Out there in the middle of the desert? This giant living out there? Like
wild.
right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories about giants in the United States too, and there's giants all over the world, as we've discussed, right? And there's a couple of interesting ones that I have for you, and I'll paraphrase over this. The reason it's believable, because obviously supposedly they found skeletons 8 foot, 70 feet.
But there's
Right.
people living today,
Right.
Well, at least a few.
Some of them have been. There's a couple good YouTube videos that have done videos on this, and look them up. Look up giants. Look at a couple things on there, and you'll find some stuff. And guys have called the Smithsonian, and the dude's like even on the phone with the lady from the paper of the story I'm about to tell you, and she's like, there was nothing there, like blah blah blah. It's like it's not real, right? Is what she tells them. But then people said they've written the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian's been like, yeah, we received those giant bones, but we never. They're gone, like whatever. Like they just miscategorized. They're in the library somewhere, but nobody knows. Or maybe they're not, right?
Right.
Or maybe they weren't giant, right? Something like that. But in the Native American myths of the United States, we've got a couple of them. I think it was
What do we have? Do you know what tribe this is from?
Yeah, actually two. Actually, I'm going to talk about just so the Choctaw apparently speak of fighting giants that were eating people. Like so, these are like monsters, giants, like kind of more of those like Dungeons and Dragons giants, right?
Fee fi fo fum.
Yeah, and they ate human flesh. And the Choctaw
Be
actually
he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread.
Yeah,
Just saying that comes from a thing like back in the day.
It does.
That the giants ate people.
Right.
Anyway,
But
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
actually, that's interesting.
I
how
mean,
they
but
got
you
into
gotta
the
think like
kids' tale,
back in like Jack and the Beanstalk,
Right.
that giant ate humans.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So that comes from a thing, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was like, when I was reading all this stuff, I was like, eating people, that's wild. So they fought these guys, the Choctaw, Native Americans, fought them basically not to extinction, but like
The Native Americans fought these giants in the Native American
Yeah, I
tales.
can't pronounce
Okay.
the way they say that giant name right now because I had it written down phonetically
Can I see
earlier.
it? Or
I don't know, but
I can take a crack at
I
trying
don't
to
know that I
pronounce it.
spelled it right either.
Nahulo?
Nahalo.
Nahulu? I don't know. Hard to say. Anyways.
But that was their word for him. And then, obviously the follow on is that maybe they migrated west, right? And then they the Paiute Indians, the Native Americans, and they fought the it's like Sitka, which
You're going into a lot of Native American things that are hard to pronounce right now.
Sorry,
So
I don't know how to pronounce
it's
this
all
stuff.
right. So it's
But-
not like you said like a
this
slur or anything like that. It's fine.
Native American Indian tribe did battle with these guys, and they ate humans as well. So they did a bunch of battle with the human eating giants, right? The Indians didn't eat giants.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, yeah, that didn't sound right. They're not eating people. They're fighting the giants that come down and eat them, right? But apparently they fought them. Eventually they all united, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
big clans and tribes all united, and they fought them back. And because they're eating people, right? You got to fight back. And there's like this place specifically called Lovelock Cave, and this might be where it really went down. It might not. Who knows? But they cornered like the last couple of them in a cave, and then they ended up like putting a bunch of wood and sticks and stuff, and starting a big fire in the front of the cave to kind of like suffocate them with like smoke inhalation or burn them till they died because they were they're getting rid of all the giant monsters, and these are almost like monster giants. They did say that the giants had like red hair, a couple things like that. But any skeleton that was long or tall, and long, tall Sally, that they said had red hair could be a scientific thing.
If it's long.
No, I'm saying like long bones, like
like long in length, yeah.
No, but like I guess probably.
And it was probably,
but if it was
probably
red,
it probably had like a strength behind it, right? Like he was probably a strong guy, right?
Are you clowning me right now?
No, it's just I'm saying it was probably long and it was strong. And it's got to get the friction on. So,
yeah,
that was a long setup for a bad
really long
punchline.
setup there.
All right, sorry, continue.
No,
Go
but
ahead.
they had red hair, and they're obviously the giants. But they said that maybe like a skeleton that's been buried with its hair in certain soils, like it can change the color of your hair. I don't know about that stuff.
I don't know.
I'm not a chemist or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's one of the excuses why. Oh, that's why they have red hair when we find these big skeletons. It's not that they were red-haired giants. It's just that over time the hair turns red.
But did the carpet match the drapes?
I don't know. But
Sorry. You can
but
tell
anyway,
we're like
they
it's late in the evening. I'm clowning. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
But anyway, they fought these guys, and they did a study, and this University of Nevada came out and said these so-called giants were like 6 feet tall, not 10.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
I mean about
It could be a bigger, but there's also a story from like Minnesota where like Norse, Vikings and stuff came over all the way through the Great Lakes and stuff, and they found giant skeletons there, possibly of like European descent. So who knows, man? There could have been some tall cultures of people walking around, maybe. So there could be some validity to like a race of giants. But
I mean, that's the thing. Like, giant is kind of in the eye of the beholder, right? And that's kind of what I was going back to about the cubits thing back earlier in the show, where I was just like, well, if they say he stood like this many cubits, what was a cubit to the people back then?
No, that's a good point.
And maybe he was only like a foot to a foot and a half taller than a normal person to be considered a giant.
Somebody who's a foot and a half taller than you is really big.
That's a tall guy, right?
Absolutely.
Comparatively, absolutely.
What's Sarah? I don't want to pronounce her name wrong. Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins. She's the three names. She was the daughter of one of the chiefs of the tribe. Mm-hmm. She actually told this story in 1883 about how that happened when they fought off the last of the
really. Was she there or her father was there?
I don't know.
Okay.
The time frame,
okay.
But I don't think she was there. But she says that. Or she's not quoted, but like people said that she said it's not a story, it's history, right?
Right.
So that gave a little bit more validity to it. Like this happened.
My father was there. Yeah, our people
against
were there.
against the big giants, and then that's pretty wild.
Yeah,
so So there is a recorded person saying, "Hey, no, this probably happened because I was told that like we passed this knowledge down, kind of thing." So it's very interesting.
And maybe it was race, or maybe it was just it was another native tribe that was just a lot taller than they were. You know what I mean?
But I think Lovelock Cave is a tourist thing that you can actually go out west.
Really?
And check out. Yeah, I don't know if you can go in there or anything like that. I would doubt it. If it's like, because who knows what, if it's like I'm not sure what type of cave it is. Some you can go in and take a tour, some you can't, and some are not safe. But yeah. And then a bunch of people, like in the United States anyway, I'm just paraphrasing over a bunch of stuff. They found a lot of these when they were looking for bat guano to like manufacture dynamite and stuff, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then, there's the story of the guy who found the crazy place down the Grand Canyon. And apparently there might have been some giant stuff involved with that. The mounds, like the Serpent Mound and stuff, they said they found a couple big giant skeletons up there. So there's a lot of stories of finding giants, even in the United States, which is kind of crazy.
That is crazy, man.
Because I always think of it from like a long off time, like in a galaxy far, far away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you think like overseas, like biblical times back in the Middle East, like that's what you think of. Like Goliath was a Philistine back, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, or whatever. But these are things that potentially happen, like maybe like 500 years ago, 400 years ago. That it's kind of it's wild to think about, man. It boggles the mind. Like giants.
were a thing of fiction and fairy tales. But like, as I said at the beginning of the show, they got to come somewhere, man. They got to come from somewhere.
So I think we touched on this. The big ones you see were part of that Photoshop contest, right? So when you Google giant skeleton, you're going to see those
some
cool
wild
photos,
stuff. Yeah.
And they're really well done. Yeah. But those are definitely not real. We know that because they're like, no, this is literally all the photo submissions for a thing. So when you see something that's bigger but not massive, all big.
My name's Kanye.
The giant.
I'm a giant, yo. I'm all big. Sorry, I continue.
That's great. Roll of 20.
The eye of Odin opens up. 16 titties fall out.
Jeez.
If you don't know what we're talking about, just go Google Key and Peele Dungeons and Dragons, and then you'll be caught up. All right, what were you saying? Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, who knows? There's a lot of crazy tales. We live in a crazy world, and it's pretty interesting.
Well, what do you think? Whether they were flesh and blood beings, remnants of an unknown species, or simply the exaggerations of storytellers, giants have left an undeniable mark on human history. Could the tales be rooted in truth, distorted over time, or is there something more? Something still lurking in the forgotten corners of our world, waiting to be discovered. Until we find definitive proof, giants will remain where they always have been, in the space between history and myth, towering over our imagination, daring us to keep searching. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Until next week, I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
And we'll see you next time.
Zumundous.